Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Pearl and I will be your moderator for today. I want to wish you a warm welcome to today's very special feature webinar, Paving the Way for Global Entrepreneurship in celebration of Global Entrepreneurship Week. Global Entrepreneurship Week is the world's largest celebration of the innovators and job creators who launch startups that bring ideas to life, drive economic growth and expand human welfare. Celebrated in over 69 countries around the world, Global Entrepreneurship Week is much more than an awareness campaign, but a platform for connection and collaboration and engaging all players along the entrepreneurship spectrum in strengthening ecosystems around the world. A warm welcome to all of our listeners, and it's great to see listeners joining us from all over the world today, including South Africa, Lagos in Nigeria, Kenya, Canada and the UK, and I'm sure many other countries around the world. So welcome to you all. I hope you enjoy today's session. So I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker. Today's speaker is Dr. Konstantinos Samiotis, and he is a management consultant, but also an honorary lecturer for the University of Roehampton London online program. So a warm welcome to you, Kostas. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Pearl. Good afternoon, friends, colleagues, potential collaborators. Probably this is the essence of this webinar. This is the essence of such occasions, meeting occasions. I'm really honored to be invited to talk in the context of the Entrepreneurship Week, representing the University of Roehampton, which is, by the latest results by Times Higher Education, one of the most modern universities in the UK. So I think it has some responsibility to talk about entrepreneurship and how to pave the way, as you said, in future development.
Yeah, absolutely, Kostas. And actually, could you tell the listeners a little bit about how your career background actually fits into the theme of Global Entrepreneurship Week today?
It's really difficult to coincide one's career with the traits of an entrepreneur. Actually, the idea is not enough to do that. It takes more than the idea. It takes a lot of action and effort. I'm not going to claim that I have achieved all it takes to be a great or a good entrepreneur in life. However, I think in my career I have been constantly trying to be close to where good ideas stem from. So I have been working very closely as coordinator or as partner in very big research and development projects, where we have actually witnessed great ideas coming to market after the collaboration of several people, several institutions, and especially the partnership between academia and industry. That's the one area that I think brings me close to entrepreneurship. But the other one is through my role as an educator, acting as a lecturer for University of Roehampton for the last years, but for other universities in my previous career. I think I have been playing a strong role in shaping up the knowledge that entrepreneurs need to succeed in their role. So it's not about instinct all the time, as it has been proven and said. Innovation and new ideas do not comprise the flash of genius. So there are other factors. There is knowledge that is needed, experience in order to become a good entrepreneur. And I'm glad we will have a chance to talk about all this further in this session.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're definitely going to be exploring a lot of those themes that you've just actually mentioned, so I look forward to that greatly. But just for the listeners today, what is Kostas going to talk about? So he's going to talk a little bit about the mandate for open innovation, followed by some of the EU roadmaps for international cooperation that are around. Then he will actually refer to some funding instruments and opportunities that are available, and then we'll close the discussion looking at the education as an entrepreneurial enabler. Now, we really want your interaction today, and there will be a number of ways you can interact. So you can either participate in some of our polls, but you can also send us questions. We want this to be engaging for you, so any questions that come up during this webinar, take the time to put them in the Q&A, and we will make sure we make some time for them at the end, or even if it comes into discussion during the webinar, I will bring them into up for discussion with Kostas. So take that opportunity, and we will be looking for great questions from you today. Okay, so actually, before we start, we want to launch a poll, and this will come up on the right-hand side. So we want to ask you, when you actually have a good business idea, something that you think, then maybe that's useful, maybe that's a great idea, what do you do next? Where do you go? Do you discuss it with a friend? Do you discuss it with an employer? Discuss it with an investor? Or do you start to develop the idea yourself? So there will be a poll launching. It's just launched, so it's right on your right-hand side. You can pick as many answers as you want. So take a moment to think about that. What do you do when you have a great business idea? So Kostas, in the meantime, whilst our listeners fill out that poll, based on your experience, where do you see most ideas originate from in business?
To tell you my experience, that I think all our attendees and most people, let's say in the same sort of area, have been faced with several ideas in their lives. They might wake up in the morning and say and think that this is a great idea. They might have gone to sleep and before that have a great idea in their mind. They might have had an idea during lunch or dinner or any moment in their lives. But one day they try to confront the idea with whether there is a need in the market, whether that's going to be profitable, whether it's going to put their own, let's say, life and their family in risk, then they start getting second thoughts about it. So having an idea does not make it great, but an entrepreneur needs to have this basic intriguing power of generating ideas. And in my own, let's say, life, it has been a little bit of everything. Whenever I had an idea, I discussed it with friends. I discussed it with myself, as I said. I even tried to come close to an investor, which is not always sufficient or always possible, depending on where you live and how easy the access to investor and funds is. There is the option of talking to your employer, but this again is it depends on the culture of the country you reside in and other conditions that will allow you to have an open relationship with your employers. The door is not always open where in a professional, let's say, environment. So it's a little bit of everything, but I consider, I think, a stepping process is always more convenient and will bring the idea closer to its realization.
It's interesting. Our poll results have come live now, Kostas, and it's interesting to see that the most 45% of people who answered said that they would develop the idea by themselves, with 36% discussing it with an investor, and the final 27% discussing it with a friend. So that's, I mean, are you surprised by these results?
Well, I'm not surprised at all. As I said, there is a phasing process in how we approach the realization of the idea. So we first need to convince ourselves, then we have to convince someone to fund the idea, but then we have to create a critical mass. Let's say, so trying it out with our friends is the best choice of checking the sustainability and the viability of the idea. So I'm not surprised at all. What I want to say, though, that is taking a step beyond that, taking a step earlier, of getting the greatest idea. I think we see ideas coming from a lot of collaboration. So we see ideas coming from working with other people, discussing with other people. So it's not a lonely process. It's not something that, as I said before, it comes to my mind out of the blue. Biggest ideas come from are generated, are created in lunches, in social events, in the water cooler, if we may say. The knowledge management research has proven that the biggest ideas, the best innovations are discussed and come from the water cooler discussion. Is the place where employees get together to rest from their routine work. So it's something that has to come out from the non-routine activities of our life.
Okay, interesting. And so how does then someone go from having their idea and taking that idea further? What is open innovation therefore about?
Well, everything, as I said, comes down to the collaboration. It's not about the individual, but about the collective effort that we put in creating ideas. And that has been beautifully captured already in 2006 in a seminal article by Harvard Business Review by the idea of connect or die. It's such a strong statement, which I think has been a landmark of all developments from that point onward in the field of innovation and entrepreneurship. We don't have to die, but we have to do something. So the answer to the second part of the statement is not to die, but connect and develop. That was the basic, let's say, motivation for empowering and strengthening collaborative aspects of the organizational from that point until these days.
Okay, and so what does open innovation actually stand for?
Well, to put it formally, and the purpose of putting formally is to pay our respect to the person who invented, the father of that concept, which is Chesbrough in 2006, but even earlier in 2003, when he made his first publication on this topic. It's the use of purposive inflows and outflows of knowledge to accelerate internal innovation and to expand the markets for external use of innovation, respectively. So essentially, this tells us that we can no longer do everything on our own. And to complement that phrase, I would say that not all the smart people work for us. That is something we need to pay attention to. How can we survive? How can we compete in today's competitive world without addressing the capabilities, the resources that reside outside our organization? Of course, we need to have the capability to connect with those people. We need to have the infrastructure. We need to have the culture. Certainly, we cannot. We can no longer keep our ideas inside ourselves.
So this is actually a relatively new concept in the business world, then.
Well, you may call it new, but the rhythm of development is so fast that 2006 already sounds quite old. Essentially, there have been changes in how competition is done and how the creation of ideas is done, both at an organizational but also entrepreneurial level. So we see some failure of the traditional entrepreneurial models, of the startup models. We see also rigidness in industry and academia collaborations. All these have contributed to the emergence of new paradigms. And an open innovation is a new paradigm in how we should manage our organization. For sure, it's not an easy one. There are a lot of risks, and most of our attendees will wonder how this can be achieved. How on earth are companies going to protect their intellectual property rights? Well, this is only a minor element of open innovation challenges. However, the theory, but also the practice, has already foreseen ways of overcoming those obstacles. I think the benefits are already looking greater than the cost, for which there is certainly a big cost, because we need to make sure that any knowledge that is being lost is being reproduced internally. So we need to be open on one hand, but we need to be able to reproduce and regenerate ourselves, reborn ourselves through appropriate internal mechanisms.
Okay, and so, I mean, you talked, give us a bit of theory background there about what open innovation is, but how does that actually apply to the real kind of business world?
Well, I think open innovation, it's a concept that was born in the real world. It started from the study of large multinational organizations. Actually, Chesbrough ideas started from the study of Procter & Gamble, the well-known consumer business. Well, we all know Procter & Gamble. We know that it's been succeeding for many years. We know that it's a dominant player in its industry, but we don't know that it went through some really tough times in the recent years. And the reason why it went through all these tough times is because it kept many things inside it. Actually, there was an incapacity unveiled for generating new ideas. So at some point, organization could not cope with the competition. Sales numbers were descending, and they had to do something. And that something was to introduce a new company firm-wide organizational intervention about opening up their innovation spectrum, the innovation mechanism. So what they did is that they created technological platforms to have their consumers, the suppliers, and all possible stakeholders involved in their innovation process, in their production capacity and facility. The result was that the company has returned to back to competition, to its high profits very soon, and nowadays is considered as a company which applies open innovation to a great extent. The same happens with Siemens and Philips, which are all documented in the literature. However,
sorry, just a moment. I mean, that takes a lot of guts and foresight to take that. It's a big step for a company like Procter & Gamble to foresee and to trust that that kind of change in their business would work, that it would be successful.
Well, no one said that it's an easy exercise. But Procter & Gamble had the courage to look in the future and foresee new ways of competing and working, and that is what it enforced at a wide level.
Okay, no, interesting. Okay, so sorry, carry on, Kostas.
Yeah, I mean. That is what I wanted to say. That's only a small portion of the industry which is occupied by large multinational organizations. The biggest, I think, representative of our open innovation funds comes from small business corporations, from small and medium enterprises. You probably know that, or these probably know that 99% the generating, the production force of the economy is moved by SMEs, by small and medium enterprise. So there, the significance of innovation is even greater. Well, what's the problem with small business compared to large corporation? Well, large organization may have the efficiencies to deliver, to produce, and compete, but small business have the inventing flexibility and agility. However, they lack the commercialization ability. So if we could bring small business with large organization together, we'll probably have the best mix of industry and companies. But that's not. This is not happening. What is happening though is that we have several networks, either among small medium enterprises or between small medium enterprises and large corporations, with the mandate of creating specific product ideas or service ideas. So think of yourself as a small company having no resources whatsoever to invest in a new idea. Well, scarcity of resources is a big problem nowadays, and also risk is also another problem. However, as it's said in the entrepreneurial, let's say, jargon, the risk of a company is not to take risks. So small business has to find ways, alternative ways of funding and working on their ideas, because they have this capacity to create new ideas. And an example is our companies, for example, documented in the literature, which have created other companies where with the participation of several industry partners. And the mandate for that company, of the new companies, was to develop a specific idea, a specific product. So actually, the initiator, the inventor of the idea, did not put any funds in that. On the contrary, another company was created with a collaborative participation of several other partners. So you see, there are many ways of seizing the benefits of open innovation. Well, and that comes down to the individual entrepreneur. The individual entrepreneur actually is the person who has changed a lot over the last years. And we see that it's not just the personality traits that matter nowadays. It's not a one-man show. I mean, there are, of course, names like Bill Gates and other people who signify the idea of an entrepreneur. But these are one in a million. We see the entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial activity being a function of the environment, but also of the knowledge that the entrepreneur is bringing. So whether we have our own company or whether we are working as part of a larger collective, we still have the ability to create ideas and come forward with a new startup company or a new idea. It's how we combine the technological resources, the knowledge and experience that we have, as well as our personality traits. And all these have to work together in order to materialize the entrepreneurial role. And open innovation has a significant role to play in all of these three aspects of the entrepreneurship activity.
Well, that's really interesting, because a lot of people could maybe think that open innovation only applies to a certain type of business, and the fact that it even applies to the individual, and the individual, it's important for them as a person to take advantage and to open up for new ideas, and maybe to amend their ideas and improve their ideas and connect with others. It's so important, as you say. And so in terms of open innovation I mean, we've looked at the theory, we've looked at it in the real world, in business. What about at policy level? How is policy supporting open innovation?
Well, the realization of the importance of open innovation has went beyond the individual or the industrial interest. It has now become a responsibility of countries, particularly, and that is inspired by my own involvement in this domain. We see the European Union taking strong initiatives in strengthening open innovation through its own programs, through its own initiatives. So you might think that European Union is just only about European countries. Well, that's not true. Open innovation is part of the digital agenda of the European Union, and also addresses countries which either reside at the borderline of Europe, but also reside far further from that. To that, I consider West Africa, South Africa, South Caucasus countries, Mediterranean countries, United States, Brazil, Russia, and whatever else you might think of. The idea is that there are several areas where the European Commission has put its strength and attention in enforcing open innovation. So the European Commission has created a way of funding ecosystems where we see countries, partners, industry partners, universities coming together to work on scientific and technological development. We see specific programs aiming to increase interaction about the different countries, essentially opening up the research and innovation field beyond the national boundaries. As I said, Europe is not a region; it's an idea, and the idea is being infused not only inside it, but also in several other geographical areas. And lastly, there is an effort done in the development of best practices. So we will be seeing lessons learned, experiences being captivated within some best practices, which can be taken up either by multinational organizations, small and medium enterprises, or even individuals. I would like to just complete this account by saying that all these are not theoretical. The European Union has created roadmaps, that's how it calls them, for international cooperation. So you will see also in your notes that you will be provided a document which describes the specific actions that are foreseen by the European Union, by the European Commission, to strengthen innovation across national boundaries, bringing industrial and academic and private organizations together in order to create new ideas to enhance entrepreneurship across Europe and beyond that.
Okay, and for those of you listening, Costa just mentioned a handout. We will be providing that towards the end of the webinar. So we will be providing some resources for you, some of the resources that Kostas has mentioned for us today. And actually, let's look at some of these resources that are available. So Kostas, if someone's interested in understanding more about the types of funding instruments and the opportunities, and also places that they can connect with each other and find out more about open innovation, what resources are available?
Well, there are numbers of resources, and it's really difficult to eliminate the resources in just a couple of minutes of discussion. For sure, the spearhead of all European Commission of funding initiatives are concentrated in its new program, which is called Horizon 2020. So this is an instrument, a funding instrument, which lasts from 2014 until 2020, where European Union intends to fund projects in several areas of scientific or industrial research, and these programs have actually international cooperation embedded in them. A country from West Africa with a country from Europe, together with another country from Eastern Asia, can work together to develop, for example, a new energy efficiency technology, or can work together to create new policy guidelines for climate change. This is as broad as it can be. So we see Horizon as being the basic vehicle for enforcing open innovation and receiving money to do that. There are other, of course, programs like the European Neighborhood Policy and Joint Research Center. Each of these areas, programs, specialize in different type of cooperations. So if one intends to have a collaboration among countries for research and innovation, you should go to Horizon. If we're talking about capacity-driven development and projects, should go to Joint Research Center. If there is, let's say, an immigration issue that needs to be studied, you should be going to your European Neighborhood Policy. And there are so many other programs as well, which concentrate on specific needs of countries and organizations. Apart from that, there are also more convenient places where one could get familiarized with the funding process. And I have an example here, which is the Innovation Place. This is nothing more but a platform, a brokerage platform, where one can submit his ideas about an innovative product and could get the interest from other people around the world to work together. Having, well, once that consortium is built, then they can all submit their proposal in the European Commission. So it's a really convenient way of eliminating the distance among the various nations. And thanks to those platforms and other as well information or matching brokerage events, we have seen proposals and projects being made with the contribution of different countries.
Great. So there's, as we've mentioned before, there is a handout. So all these resources will be with links, will be available to you to review after the webinar. So do have a look at that and make use of those resources. Now, in terms of the individual and our listeners today, we want to ask you the second poll question, because we want to know from you, what do you need to inspire your entrepreneurial aspirations? So if you are an aspiring entrepreneur and you feel that you want to develop your skills, or maybe you're lacking some skills, what do you feel you need? Do you feel that maybe you need some education, mentoring, or opportunity to network with other entrepreneurs? So take a moment to answer that poll question on the right-hand side. Again, it's a multi-answer question poll, so just submit any answers you want, and then we'll move on there. But Kostas, you know, we've talked a lot of different areas about open innovation here. We've looked a little bit about the policy, the theory behind it, but also how it applies to business. But how can someone actually develop skills to become entrepreneurial in the first place?
Well, actually, while we're waiting, I think, to see the results, the results will probably reinforce all of these three elements that you have put in the poll, like education, mentoring, and opportunity to network with other entrepreneurs. And I'm glad I've been given this opportunity to talk about as an educator. So, as I said at some point in my pitch, entrepreneurial personality is no longer down to the person itself. It has to do a lot with the person, the agonies, the aspiration, let's say the risk prone character of the person. However, it's not all about this. We have seen a lot of failures because all these have not been complemented with appropriate knowledge. We also have the results now from the poll, which show that the first choice is the opportunity to work with other entrepreneurs, mentoring, and education. I think that reinforces the message that we are trying to convey here in this slide. I consider education as the first element, not without reason. I think we first need to have the knowledge of our subject matter domain. Unless we know enough about, for example, retail sector, we cannot justify or make claims about our ideas in future investors, in people who want to fund the idea. So the first thing is to have strong knowledge, but also the skills to think about how to acquire and inquire in that knowledge. And I think studying at postgraduate level or even a higher level degrees are fundamental in the preparation of entrepreneurs, of people who are genuinely interested in finding out more about new things. This is the definition of the entrepreneur: seeking opportunities, seeking and trying to see where the opportunity lies, where the knowledge lies. So we see programs like online programs of studying, but also campus-based programs, trying to establish an international spirit and identity among our students. It's not just getting the knowledge from the instructors, but also becoming part of a wider international community. It's through that exchange of knowledge and experience that will stimulate our interest. In many cases, in my classes, in the online programs, I see our students telling their own experience in Ghana, in Greece, in Belgium, in all different areas of the world, and each other learning from those various experiences. What a better way of mentoring is that? And what a better way of networking is there other than that? It also nurtures what we say as a new pattern of university-industry relationship. So we see that it's not just people at the early time of their lives trying to acquire basic knowledge. We see professionals. We see people in the mid age of their life wanting to explore the subject matter domain or new domains, wanting to make a turn in their life, in their careers, engage with different fields, theoretical or practical fields. So it's not just about the knowledge. It's about how we can bring the industry closer to the university, how we can make this relationship more meaningful. And I think getting online, getting on the university is a means to do that. I mean, we see even corporations funding those programs a lot in our days. So it's not just the individual aspiration. It's also the corporate anxiety of staying at the top of the league, of the knowledge league. They know that if they do not refresh their employees' knowledge and experience, they will probably die. And that's part of the connect or die idiom that we discussed earlier. And lastly, I think what education actually does, apart from all other benefits, it supports the scientific knowledge sharing. So we learn to our students that what I know is powerful only if it can be shared. If I cannot share what I know, then it's probably meaningless. Keep it in with myself does not prove anything. So we need to infuse the idea, learn the future and the current managers what are the strengths, the powers, the benefits of opening up their ideas to the external world. I think all these reinforce the open innovation mandate, and I'm glad to have some really powerful students studying for our programs in that respect, be able to reinforce that mandate in their careers, in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a very interesting discussion there in terms of how to enable those skills, but also to develop that network, but also share ideas and encourage ideas as well. And Kostas, we've had a lot of questions, great questions from the floor, and I want to make sure we take some of these, and we may go a little over time because there's some really interesting discussion here to be had with the questions. So one question was saying, okay, so how can we trust this? You know, we are living in a society where we cannot trust each other and everyone, but sorry, I've just lost the... There we go, sorry. We are living in a society, we can't trust each other and everyone, but what's the other solution beyond trust in doing business? So how can you get over this issue of trusting people to not take your idea away from you, but to develop an idea alongside you?
Well, I'm not the person who will argue for this person, but it's all the great scholars in the management field who have already argued against that logic, that keeping the ideas to ourselves make it more powerful. On the contrary, we see the pace of developments going so fast that the competitive edge that we can maintain only lasts for a few seconds, sometimes even less. So if we don't realize that sharing is powerful, then we might end up dying. So don't put your strengths or your money in something that will just remain competitive for 1 or 2 days or even some days longer, because eventually it will die out. You need to put your strengths in how you will regenerate yourselves. You will create new ideas, and if you have the partnerships to do that, then you have less to fear than just fearing of going live alone.
Okay, so it's finding the right partnerships as well. So getting the right connections to enable you to work together and be innovative in what you're doing.
Yes, that's the idea of creating appropriate networks. Not all networks are effective, but choosing the people who you will work with, it's really fundamental in this process of opening up our spirit, our work, our ideas.
Yeah. Just for those of you who haven't noticed, a box will have just opened up on the left-hand side, and you will see a webinar handout where you can download that, and that has all the resources that Kostas has talked to us about today. So take a moment to download that, and that will save on your desktop. So I just wanted to mention that, and we'll go on with some questions. So another question, okay, Professor, thank you for what you've talked about. You mentioned that the concept of open innovation has confronted protective measures Please, may you please mention some?
Was the question about protective measures?
Yeah, protective measures. So the open innovation has confronted protective measures. Can you mention some? Do you need some more explanation?
I can anticipate. I can preempt a little bit our friend's question. Well, I think what is implied here is that what organizations are doing to protect themselves, going, let's say, against the flow, against the stream, and unfortunately, we see several of these initiatives going on. However, once the companies realize that it takes too much money to invest in retaining those protective measures, protective fields, then they will sooner or later abandon that tactic. It's much more efficient and effective. It requires less coordination to partnership and network than to create those fences that will eventually protect you from external companies, from external competition.
Okay, and another question that came in was, although I agree with the importance of acquiring, what do you, I guess, education, what do you say to young people in rural South Africa who do not have access to tertiary education? If you don't have access to the education, what can you do to develop yourself?
Well, access is really important nowadays, and it doesn't have to live in South Africa. You can live in the northern Greece, or you can live in any other place of the world where access is insecure, or access is still in its early, let's say, phase. And I'm talking about not just access to education, but also access to funding. Of course, access to education is something more fundamental, and I'm confident that sooner or later all the countries will realize the importance of education in their economic revamping. We see that even in the days of economic recession, it's the reforms, the industrial and private sector or public sector reforms that drive the way out from the economic recession. So once that is realized, once the resources are being found, I think access will become even easier. On the other side, that's let's say the demand side. The supply side, I think, has made all the necessary steps to make it easy for you. So the University of Roehampton provides online education. This is a way of reaching out to the last person in the most deserted area of the world. Still, you need to have internet access, but I think there is at least one option, one choice of being able to acquire education. And let me just spend 1 minute on the other type of access. Those of you who want to have access to the international cooperation opportunities, and you might not be understanding the information from the website, there should be, and there is always, what we call as national contact point. This is a person or a designated organization who has the knowledge of coaching you, of mentoring you in what could be possible opportunities for funding. So try to identify which are these companies, who are these people. They are all listed in the European Commission's website, so it won't be really difficult to identify those people in your own countries. You might already know them, actually.
Yeah, that's true actually. And actually, when you're looking for a mentor, looking for someone, anybody who's maybe launched a successful business and runs a successful business, these people can always help you to grow and to learn and to understand where you can go forward, I'm sure. And actually, another question that ties into this discussion that's come from our listeners today, is without an enabling environment, do you believe entrepreneurs can excel? So, do you think that entrepreneurs can excel without the correct environment to do so?
Well, I think it's really difficult for someone with aspiring ideas to flourish in an environment with a lot of cultural, political obstacles. I'm hearing from my students all these problems that are encountered in their own countries, sometimes due even to war situations. So I agree that without the appropriate environment, not only corporate environment, but also social and economic environment, we cannot expect miracles in entrepreneurship. We see a lot of people immigrating to find that environment, but that's not always the solution to the problem. There are steps that are being taken, and I think the international cooperation funding aims at closing the gap of that divide, of that innovation divide that we observe across the world. Not all countries are equally innovative. We cannot. I mean, no one can compare itself with the Silicon Valley, but we see small Silicon Valleys born in countries we have never thought about. So it's a little steps that we have to take before creating that nurtures environment.
Yeah, absolutely, and a really interesting discussion there, fueled by really good questions. So thank you to everyone who asked questions. And there were a couple of other questions that we haven't got time to pose today. But what we will do is, if you don't mind, Kostas, we will send you the question and the contact detail of the person. If you could, if you have a bit of time, it'd be great if you could have that discussion with that person. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's no most important time than the one that is exchanged, is allocated in the exchanges between myself and my fellow students, my colleagues, on really fundamental issues. So anything that is happening outside the class is always more interesting.
Absolutely. Okay, wonderful, Kostas, and thank you so much for taking the time today to speak to us and share some really interesting ideas. For those of you listening, if you have any comments or anything you'd like to share about this event, or anything you'd like to say about the presenter, then please do so. Take some time to let us know what your thoughts on today's event in the Q&A. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much, Kostas. We appreciate the time you've taken to present to us today, and I hope you've enjoyed doing it for us.
I have enjoyed it greatly. It was a great pleasure, and I really hope to see some of our attendees in a future context, either educational, academic, or even professional.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you who are interested in Roehampton online programs and you're not already connected to us, then do come and visit us online. So you can find us at roehampton-online.com. The website will open once this webinar is finished. We are also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, so do come and say hello to us in those environments as well. So we've just had a nice mention there, so thank you so much for the session. I appreciate it. So we're glad you've enjoyed the session, and thanks so much for joining us. And as Kostas said, we hope one day to see you either in class or in other environments out there. So thanks again, and have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.